Cloud. Here we go.
Great.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I almost feel like, so I've been re-listening to your audiobooks. I feel like we've been hanging out all week.
Right? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I love it.
I'm super excited to be talking to you because you wrote this book, Girl Walks Out of a Bar, in 2016.
Yes, it came out then.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Long time,
So
it feels
you're like
now.
the OG of memoirs.
It's so funny because when it came out, I was 10 years sober. I had, or more than, I was 12 years
I think
sober.
you were 12.
I was 12. Right. The epilogue. I was 12 years sober. Yeah. And I had been writing for 10 years in the mornings. So,
Wow.
yeah, because I was working, the whole time. And so I would write in the morning and then I would go to work. And I was in a workshop and I didn't really expect it to be a book, but fortunately it did turn out that way. And
So awesome.
I love that there's so much since then, because I felt like when I first got sober in 2004, I was just grabbing for anything I could. I ate up memoirs like crazy. I wanted to see my story. I wanted to identify with people. And I love now that there's so much more.
So much more. Yeah. That's amazing. So you just started writing your story in the mornings just as a journaling practice, or how did that come about?
Well, it's funny because I went into the first thing I wrote in the book, I write about being in detox. And yeah.
Oh my God, that experience. Listen, people have to get this book just for the detox story. That was so intense. Like you wrote it in such a vivid, so I got sober a long time ago. I don't even remember what a lot of that, you know what I mean? But it was so good that you put it all down on paper as you were experiencing it, because I had like a visceral response to that. I was like, oh my God, I totally remember that stuff.
Yeah. Like what happened was I was in detox for 5 days, and my friends and family, everybody knew I drank too much, but nobody really had any clue about how bad everything was.
Amazing that you were able to hide it.
Yeah. And then one day I was like, hey, I got to go to detox. And because I thought I was actually going to die that day. And for some reason on that particular morning, I decided I didn't want to, even though I had wanted to for so many mornings before that. And so when people were kind of stunned, like my friends all came over, like, what's happening here? And I went into the detox for 5 days. And when I got out, it had been this insane experience that I write about in the book, but also I had so many questions from people like, what happened? Why did this? How did you not tell me? What were you feeling like? And what happened? What did they do to you in the detox? Like what happens when you go to a hospital to have a detox? Like nobody, my whole circle, I had no sober references. And so that's why it feels very visceral. It's because I started writing like immediately, because I wrote as a way to, there was something in my brain that said, I need to memorialize what just happened. Like I had a new niece who had just been born, and I was like, what if she needs this one day? Wow. And so I started just writing what happened as, in the detox right away. And then I would hand it to my friends and family, be like, here, read this. This is what happened. And so it was really a tool for me. Like I somehow wanted to memorialize that. I hadn't thought about writing a book. And then, I wanted to use it to let people know in a way, so I didn't have to keep telling the story. And so
kind of funny.
It was totally cathartic though. I had never been a journaler. I had never been. So from that, right when I got out of the detox on, I started this morning writing thing. And I realized like it was helping me answer questions as much as it was them, because, a lot of it was, how did it get this bad and why? And things that I thought were totally normal, like going home from bars with randos and, like people were like, what did you do?
Oh my God. When you told the story in the book about that guy who was like, I could kill you right now.
Yeah.
That was terrifying.
I ended up dating him after that. I did. Like, that's how bad my decision making was.
Yeah. And listen, this is all before the Me Too movement. So I don't think people are so quick to like throw that shit out there.
Yeah, right. Right. Very true. But yeah, so that's how it started. And then I would write, because I didn't tell my workplace. I worked in a law firm and they wanted me to go. I went into detox because I had to, and I knew that I needed a medicated detox at that point because it was alcohol and cocaine like 24/7.
Yeah.
And it had been for about 18 months. And so, but I was working at a law firm. I was a director of client development at the time. I wasn't practicing, and I had practiced before. And I said, the first thing I did when I decided to go in was, it was a Monday morning. So I sent them, it wasn't called my family. It wasn't whatever. I called my doctor and figured out where I was going. And it was the only place that had a bed in Manhattan. And now I know why it had a bed. It's like referred to as the snake pit of New York City detoxes and a lockdown, psych hospital. And so the first thing I did was email my firm and said, the people I worked with and everything, and say, listen, I had a medical emergency over the weekend. I'm going to be out. I'm in the hospital, but I'm going to be fine, but I'm going to be out of touch this week. And please don't worry about me. I'll see you Monday. And I knew that I could be out. I could tell the firm I'm out sick 5 days without needing to explain it. But if I was going to be out a sixth day, I would have to produce some sort of doctor's note. And there was no way I was going to do that with my law firm. I'd gotten like a nice raise and bonus the month before I checked in.
That is so crazy.
It's crazy. And so when I was in the detox getting out, they were like, oh, here are all the places, you can go now for 30 days. Like, this place has water therapy.
28 days.
Right. 28 days. And I was like, wait, no, I didn't sign up for that. I got to go back to work on Monday. And they fought me about it. And they were like, that's the dumbest thing you could do right now.
I mean, typically it is.
Right. Go right back into what you left last week. And so I was like, I'm not telling them. I'll tell everyone in my life, my friends, my family, I'll shout it from the rooftops. I will not tell my law firm. And so I agreed to go to, and I write about it in the book too, to go to group, like outpatient IOP. So intensive outpatient at night, 2 nights a week instead. And I started going to 12-step meetings right away, because it's funny. There's this great guy. He was like a 24-year-old artist recovering from heroin in my group. And I entered group at 10 days sober. He was, or maybe I remember signing in that day. I was already in group at that point, but we had to write like days CNS. And I remember the first time asking him, like, what is CNS? And he was like, clean and sober. How many days? And I wrote down like whatever it was. I thought it was like 10. And I see him write down 11, and I was like, 11. Oh my God. He became like my sober guru.
Your hero.
Because I would never be as sober as him. And so when he was like, I went to one of those, because they were telling us to try 12-step. And he was like, I went to one of those meetings. It's okay. It's actually pretty cool. You should try. And then it was like, okay, well, if Thomas is going, then I'll try. And once I walked into my first AA meeting, then I was like, oh my God, I'm home.
Oh yeah. I had that feeling of, oh my God, I'm home.
Right? Like you felt so alone before then.
Yeah. I felt like these people get my kind of crazy.
I was like, these people know my brain better than the closest people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
In like one, I can, I went, my first 12-step meeting, my first AA meeting was, I walked in and it was in a church. It was the stereotype of a church. And I saw all these people sitting in this room, and they're like, some are eating lunch. It was a lunchtime meeting. I snuck out from work, and some are eating lunch, and they're chit-chatting, and they're all different ages, and they're all, everybody, it was in Midtown, like near Broadway in Manhattan, and all walks of life, everybody. And I was like, excuse me, where's the AA? Do you know where the AA meeting is? And they were like, this is it. And I was like, oh, these are those people, I had no idea.
I know.
And then there was a speaker, and it was this woman who was younger than me, but like she was celebrating her 1-year anniversary. And I was thinking, how do you do that? How do you get a year? How do you like it? A monumental achievement.
Right.
And I listened to her, and her story, it wasn't entirely mine, but I identified with a lot of the thoughts and feelings and sort of what she was doing. And basically, like, she was so happy. She was, I think about what I was like on my 1-year anniversary, and it's that she was like that, just like joy and gratitude. And I just was blown away. And that I remember thinking about her and just watching her. And it was like, I always say it was like that scene in When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, yeah.
She does like the fake orgasm in the diner. I was like, I'll have what she's having. Right. And what she had was 1 year sober.
Yeah.
So I was hooked. Yeah.
That is amazing. Oh my God. I have so many questions, but do you mind if we start with a fun little lightning round?
No, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not really starting, but you know what I mean? When you first got sober, I know you said there wasn't a lot of memoirs or anything, but did you have a favorite book in the beginning that just opened your mind?
Yes, I read what I read, and I was counting days when I read it, was Dry, Augustine Burroughs. And it was so funny. And it was just so, have you read Dry?
I have not.
Oh my God. It's his recovery memoir. It is so funny. I know it may not, this was now, again, this was in 2004. So I don't know how popular it is now, but like, then
now I want to read it.
Yeah, it may not, I read it so long ago now, I can't remember exactly how inappropriate it was, but I'm sure it was inappropriate.
Listen, that's the best kind of humor in my book.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, you should, if you like humor in your recovery memoir. And that, when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, funny people get sober. This is so cool. Yes. I love that. And then I also, Caroline Knapp's Drinking a Love Story.
Yeah.
Which I had been terrified of reading. I knew of its existence before I got sober, but then I finally read it when I got sober. And then Anthony Kiedis came out with his memoir, Scar Tissue. And I'm a big Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. And so for some reason, like the crazy things that the situations he was in, I became like sort of a mantra to me. Like, if Anthony Kiedis can do it, I can do it. So,
right. Yeah. There's something about seeing somebody that has just been through the ringer and they get sober.
Yes.
Yeah. Some people take it like, well, I wasn't that bad, but that's the whole mentality of look for the similarities, not the differences.
Right. Identify, don't compare. Yeah.
Yeah. Identify, don't compare. That's amazing. Any other books?
Those were the big ones. And then Lit by Mary Karr, that came out a little later. That's her recovery memoir, and I'm a huge Mary Karr fan.
Oh, nice. All right. That's
so those were the early ones. Yeah.
Yeah, they were the early ones. Yeah. Do you have a favorite mantra or quote that you think about a lot or live by?
There's sort of a few. There's sort of a few. There's one from it's actually a Red Hot Chili Peppers lyric, which is from the song Snow, which is, the more I see, the less I know, the more I like to let it go.
Ooh,
it's a good one,
right? So profound,
isn't it?
The more I see, the less I know.
And he was, wrote that in, Snow is about sort of cocaine, heroin, but
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And the other, oh my gosh, this is a movie that I don't recommend watching unless you're prepared to like really go put yourself through one. But I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Candy with Heath Ledger and Abby Cornish?
No, Heath Ledger?
Heath Ledger. It is, you have to be prepared for an emotional ringer going through it, but like they play heroin addicts. Ooh. And it's so brutal, but it's really, I found it cathartic because I wept the whole time after, like, and it's intense, in a dark way, but he has this line near the end of it that has always stuck with me and that I use a lot, which is, if you're given a reprieve, it's a good thing to remember just how thin it is.
Ooh, that
Yeah.
is good. Just how thin it is.
Yeah.
That is good.
But I definitely, if you're, you know, not if you're willing to put yourself through it, Candy is a great movie. And it's like Heath Ledger was so
I know.
every role he played, he, really became sort of consumed in, and he played an unbelievable heroin addict.
Oh my goodness. I might have to check that out. There is something about like those sad movies. I was just reading that. Have you read that new Brene Brown book yet? Atlas of the Heart.
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And she
Oh,
does
wow.
talk about how people, they talk about what's your favorite sad movie, which
That
seems,
would be mine, I think.
would it? Yeah. But
Yeah.
there's something about people that it's very closely tied to like having a release and like
Yes.
identifying with others.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that is the gratitude for where your life is now.
Completely. You
Yeah.
know what movie I saw made me do that too was did you ever see Thank You for Sharing?
Well, it sounds familiar.
Mark Ruffalo plays a sex addict, and Gwyneth Paltrow's in it. And it's actually, I thought it was a really good movie. And like I watched, it's one of those things where you watch and and it's about his recovery and all that. And things are going to happen, and you're like, no, don't do that. Don't make that decision.
They're
And
nose diving
I
off
was
the cliff.
I was watching it with my cousin. I have 5 cousins. I have a lot of cousins, but these 5 are sisters. And we were away together, the 6 of us, and we watched it. And none of them are they're not big drinkers, and they're not, but they're like my huge supporters. They're a little older than me. And at the end of the movie, I didn't even feel like it was coming. I just started bawling. And they were like, they didn't know what to do with me. They're like, oh my God. I'm like, sometimes it hits that nerve. And you saw like the rawness of, what he was dealing with, and sort of, it was a release. It was catharsis.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Just to relate.
But that's a good movie.
Yeah. Relating to the depths that we go to. Right. Like maybe, and that's the thing about meetings or hearing other people's stories, is maybe the circumstances are different, but the feelings are all the same. And that's really what I related to in your book. It's like, listen, I was not I crashed and burned at 25, and I didn't really have a lot to lose. Let's just be honest. I was like a cocktail waitress.
That's young. That had to be, as a cocktail waitress at 25. That's hard to get sober in that job at that age.
Well, I was like waitressing. Like I always worked like that. That was the thing, is I was a little worker bee, right? I have had a job since I was 12. Right. Like I always liked to work, and I always had 2 or 3 jobs. And so the idea of powerlessness I just got it clearly. That was one of the things I was going to ask you about too. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but
no.
You are a high-powered, get shit done kind of girl. And one of the biggest obstacles I hear about people like resisting 12-step programs, one of the things is this idea of powerlessness. I just interviewed another attorney who was like, I wasn't powerless. Like she was like, I got shit done. And I was like, yeah, you're missing the other half of that statement, which is over alcohol.
Yeah.
Because if you're not powerless over alcohol, go drink.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. To me, powerless, like I truly thought I was going to die that day. And like I said, for the first time in like 12 years, I didn't want to. And, or in that moment, I didn't want to. I was afraid my parents would like have to come retrieve my body off like the floor of my apartment building hallway. And when I thought about powerlessness over alcohol, I was like, yeah, like that didn't even faze me. I was like, I've got no power over it. I was so like, I really had like the gift of desperation, as we say, surrendering to me on alcohol, not on anything else. Was not a jump for me. And in fact, I found it empowering, because once
Same.
I could say, I'm done negotiating with you, you're out, right? The alcohol, we're done here. Then I was empowered to figure out what else I could do.
Right.
And that whole idea to me, like, I get it, that it is very fraught and potentially dangerous for vulnerable people, women, to go into a room and say I'm powerless. But I think the over alcohol is the thing. And
Yeah, that's the incomplete thought.
yeah.
Not over
And I
everything
do,
else.
and my experience in AA, I saw a couple like creepy predator type guys in the East
Oh, for
Village
sure.
meetings, but like
Yeah.
women and other guys would take care of that situation. Like if people saw, at least at the meetings I would go to, I think of like the East Village meetings I used to go to in the mornings. If we saw guys, like if anybody saw guys like creeping on
The newcomer
women,
girls.
oh my gosh, yeah. There was that was like not happening.
Yeah, that is not cool. Yeah, the women quickly pulled me aside when I first started going to meetings because I was young.
Oh, me, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
And they pull you aside and go, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, stick with the women.
Right.
They
encouraged
me to
girls
go
with
to
the
women's.
girls, boys with the boys was what I was told. Yeah.
Yeah, same. So that was really important. I feel like there's a mindset to going in, but I also had that gift of desperation. I was willing to do anything they told me to do.
You were. So you were not like
sure.
fighting it at all. You were like,
oh no. Done. I had been desperate to be sober for I had a really bad incident with my sister and a drunk night that was really bad. And the next day I started questioning my alcoholism or my drinking. And I started asking the questions, and one question led to another. And I spent 2 years in the self-help section at Barnes and Noble trying to think my way into right living. Right. And then I had these two customers. I was a outside sales rep for a transportation company. And these two guys that were customers were like, they were in the program and they started sharing their stories with me, and I was identifying with them, and they were sharing this ideas like, oh, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting.
That's right.
Yeah. And I was kind of like you. I had a super nice apartment. I had a cell phone. And back in 94, a cell phone was a battery pack that weighed like 15 pounds.
Oh, I remember.
Remember those with the curly cords? I was all, hey, I thought that was hot shit.
I love it.
But the outside looked good, but the inside was a tragic dumpster fire.
That's what it is. That's what happens. Like people are like, you had a high bottom. I'm like, no, I didn't. Like I was like, your bottom is when you stop digging. And my bottom, I didn't lose my apartment or my job or anything like that, but I hated myself. Like I had a mirror in front of, I used to look in this mirror when I was walking out the door to go to work in the morning, and I would have had to, drink and do some coke to like balance out to get normal. Because like if you saw me when I came to in the morning, like you'd be like, I can't even say woke up. You'd be like, that's a very sick person sitting in, and if you saw me like an hour and a half later, after I'd had a couple glasses of wine and some blow and calibrated, that's getting ready. That's what I felt to go to work. And they'd be like, hey, Lisa, what's up? So, but on the inside, like I used to look in that mirror on my way out the door to make sure I didn't have lipstick on my teeth and to make sure I didn't have, like coke or blood in my nose. And I would say every morning on the way out, I would look right in the mirror and go, I hate you. And that's how I left for the day. Like that was my bottom. My bottom wasn't like the cash and prizes stuff, but I mean, and physically I was throwing up blood. It was bad.
I heard you had it coming out both ends.
Me too. I was gonna not say that, but me too. Yeah.
I mean, listen, it's the ugly truth. It's like the addiction and alcoholism. I think of addiction and alcoholism as kind of the same thing. It's all you're physically addicted. Yeah. And it just takes us to very dark places. I am just astounded that you were able to work as much and as hard and at the level that you did for so long.
Well, So like, I think there's, first of all, I was able, for whatever reason, my boss at that time was not in New York. So I didn't have a boss in New York, and I was able
Nobody
to,
like put eyes on you every day.
right. I had people who worked for me, but I didn't have to be in the office every day. So those last 18 months that were the worst. I was working at home a ton. I was, I would get really carefully calibrated to go in when I had to sit in a room full of partners at 8 a.m. But I was, it was not 10, like it was going to come down. Like there's no question. And the other thing is like, when I speak, I do a lot of speaking to law firms and law students.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about the fact that the idea that you're high functioning is just a total myth, because you're high functioning until the day you're not, right? You're high functioning until you miss a court date, or you get a DUI, or, like I have a friend who was a totally high functioning lawyer, was bringing her kids to school at 8 a.m. and got pulled over for sort of weaving and blew twice the limit at 8 a.m. And, she was a big lawyer at a big insurance company. She was high functioning until the day she wasn't, like something happens. And then the other piece of it, I think, is that I was high functioning at my job, but when I got sober, within a year, I got a new job with a lot more responsibility at a different place. Like you're high functioning at nowhere near your potential when you're high functioning. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, this job that I made to be like this, I work so hard. I can't possibly show up for you to do any of these other things because I've got to unwind from all the hard work. Like all of a sudden when I got sober, I would be showing up in the office every day at like 9 o'clock, and I'd be wrapped up at 5:30, and I was like, how did the job didn't change,
Right.
I did. And so, I never told them, I went right back to work that next Monday, and everybody was like, and, I had called out sick a lot, saying like my stomach, I had stomach issues. So, I had said, they were like, oh, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I've had problems with my stomach and now everything's fine. They're like, yeah, you look so much better. Like in a week.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Let's talk about a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
You look like shit before.
I didn't realize how bad you looked, but now that I see you now, I guess you did look bad. Like people know you at a certain level.
Yeah.
And then you can, you don't realize your potential at all.
Well, it's so funny. Everybody is just thinking about themselves, right?
Oh my God, that's the biggest thing, right? That is so true.
Nobody cares.
Right. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Someone's paying attention to you. We're all self-absorbed. You're not the only one who's self-absorbed.
I speak on imposter syndrome sometimes. And I always say that. I'm like, I know when you like have something to do or you're sitting in a meeting, you're sitting there thinking, oh, I just sounded so stupid and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, the person next to you is thinking about, can they get out of this meeting in the next 10 minutes because they have to leave to pick up their kid. Somebody else is thinking about the thing that they think they screwed up, and somebody else is thinking 3 meetings ahead of the day. Like nobody's nearly concerned. They're not sitting in the meeting looking at you the whole time and thinking about you the whole time.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. The piece of shit at the center of the universe, right?
I don't center my universe.
Yeah.
What's one of the things you wish you knew when you first got sober?
Oh, that's a great question. I would have to say, I wish I knew how to be easier on myself, gentler with myself.
Oh, yeah.
Because I went into it, I was like I said, I would say, I hate you all the time. And I would, before I got sober, and I carried too much of that with me, I think, into early recovery, instead of giving myself enough credit in the day to say, look at you, like, holy shit, you haven't had a drink in a week. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I found higher power was that stuff, was like when I actually didn't drink for a period of time, my sponsor was like, so do you think you did that? Or I'm like, no, I know I didn't do that.
That's interesting. That's another thing. I spoke to somebody recently who is an atheist that got sober, and I always wondered about that. It's you. So that was the sort of thought process you had. Somebody pointed out that you did something that
Well,
you
for
previously
me,
couldn't do.
right. Like I always had wondered, like I had this sort of, I've always, I grew up Jewish in a very kind of, reformed secular way. And but I always had this idea of there was some force in the universe, right? There
Right.
was something
Yeah. Something.
because I couldn't understand. And while I was going through it, like I ran around New York City in a blackout for 12 years. Like, how did I not at 3 a.m. step in front of a cab on First Avenue? How did I not, I was in bad drug places. Like, how did I not have something horrific happen?
Yeah.
How did I not, really suffer the things that the yets, right, with that? And I always kind of felt like there was sort of something looking out for me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when I got sober, I felt like my sponsor literally said to me, and this was before she was my sponsor, and I was just talking to her because I was like scoping out who to ask to be my sponsor. And she said to me, I said, I've got this step 1 stuff because I know I have no control over alcohol, but I don't know how I'm going to do with the rest of this stuff. And she was like, so how many days are you sober? And I remember it was like 14 or something, I don't know. And maybe it was like 30, I don't remember, but she was like, and do you think you did that, or do you have some help? And when I thought about that, I was like, wow, my best attempts when I tried to do this, I ended up at my dealer's or with my dealer coming over, like it wasn't like, and I was like, that's really good. And like, so maybe, and I started putting it together early. That helped me along with step 2. And I was like, maybe part of why I was fortunate enough to be looked out for was because I was supposed to get here, and maybe I'm supposed to not drink and help somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when I started thinking about publishing, trying to make my little writing project a book, I started thinking about it as like, yeah, I think of all the nights that I was alone on my living room floor trying to like, just drinking and hating myself and wishing that I couldn't, and not, feeling so alone. And I knew like it couldn't be just me, but I couldn't imagine. And so when I started thinking maybe I can write this book, it was like, I would want the next person who is sitting on their living room floor to know they are not alone. It's not just them. And I felt like I had something to offer on that. So when we started talking about it being a book, people said, like, oh, so you could fictionalize it, so it's not with your job, or you could use a pen name so nobody knows it's you. And I was like, no, I think I'm supposed to own this one. I think like I need to put my name on it and put it out there, because the whole point of putting it out there to me always was, and still remains, to let somebody else know they're not alone, and that it's not just, that there's something on the other side. And so it was always really important to me to do that. And that's sort of where I see, like, when I think about higher power, and that I feel like it got me where I was, supposed to be. And without my higher power, there's no way I'd be sober. And, that the purpose of me being sober and having survived all of that stuff is to hopefully help somebody else.
Absolutely. It's so interesting to think about how everybody has sort of this different idea of what a higher power is. Because I grew up religious. But I had kept begging God to fix me, and I never felt fixed. And so I was like, well, I give up. If I can't be good, then I'll be good at being bad.
Right.
Right. And
totally.
And I gave up. But when I had that gift, I had that bottom and the gift of desperation. My prayer was, God, please help me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I went back, but I couldn't go back to my original religious,
right.
like this way is the only way, or it's a punishing, jealous, like none of that
Right.
none of that ever made sense to me.
That's that saying that religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell and spirituality is for people who've been there.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah. Because I had been there, girl. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, right?
That was
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
But redefining what those words meant.
Totally. Yes.
That was key for me because I didn't have to buy into somebody else's definition of that word. And I was
Yeah.
like, you can do that? I didn't know you could do
Right.
that.
Right.
Did you go through that process? Did your sponsor like say, hey, what would you want God to be in that whole like?
Oh yeah, we did all the workbooks. Like I had to
Nice.
do like my step 1 workbook, which was, I remember, like the question was, write down 5 ways in which your life has been unmanageable. And my sponsor said, you don't, if you have more, you can write more. And then I called her and I was like, I'm at 28. Should I stop? And she was like, yeah, I think you've done enough.
Yeah. There's an established pattern here. That's
Right.
good.
I
That
think
was
we
the
see
point.
unmanageability here.
Yeah.
And
She's such an overachiever.
yeah, right. I'm like, what else? What else?
Yeah.
And then, with step 2, the step 2 workbook was the same thing. And it also made me think about that question of, do you really think you got here yourself?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
if
in
you're,
my mind, I heard this lady at a meeting say that God works through my life like God with skin on it. Like people were God works in my life through people.
oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, because there are people who are like tapped into that idea that of that service mentality of like, what would you have me do today? Who would you have
Right.
me help? What would you have me do? That kind of a
Yes.
mentality. And then people
Yes.
show up in your life with this kindness of heart and this gentleness and this loving acceptance and
Yeah.
and I at the times when I needed them the most. Did you have
Right.
it sounded like you had when I was listening to your audiobook, it sounded like you had those experiences early on.
I did. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, everything that my sponsor was she was tough, but she was also just the best. And I loved it. And she would just be like in the morning, and I still, every morning when I wake up, I mean, this started happening even before I met her, though, from the first day that I woke up and I hadn't had a drink. I remember just like looking up at the sky and being like, thank you. And it's still the first thing I do in the morning. Like I wake up and I'm like, thank you. And it's just automatic. But like she said, because she was like, you have to start praying every morning. And I was like, I don't really know how to pray. I've never done that. And I don't know really about, what my idea of God is. And she was like, just ask for guidance for what, and the way she used it was very much God. And I've sort of adapted it to the universe,
Right.
just ask God, ask to have an understanding of what God's will is for you today and for, the power to carry that out.
Right. Oh, yeah. I heard one time that the prayer that never fails is thy will be done.
Right. Well, that's right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, are you familiar with Tara Brach? She's a Buddhist
No.
meditation teacher. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. You would love her.
Yeah.
But I was listening to one of her lectures and she was talking about peace is being in the present moment with no judgment.
Oh my gosh, that's
And when I get
perfect.
twisted up, and that's an idea that I'm really working with lately. Whenever I get twisted up, it's like, where am I? I'm like in the future guy because I've like predisposed to anxiety and stuff, and that's about future stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm not present, and I'm full of judgment, and it's hard not to be full of judgment in this day and age where there's so many problems.
I know.
It can be overwhelming, but I have to bring it to right here, right now. What's the next right thing? No judgment.
Do the next right thing was my sponsor, like all the time. Take the next right action, let go of the results. And when I would be
let go of that's the trick. Let go of the results. Yeah.
And when I would be spinning out, she would say, where are your feet? Where are your feet right now? And I'd be like, they're on the floor. She'd be like, right. You're safe. You're in your house. You're right here, right now.
Right.
Stop being in, next month.
Yeah. Right here, right now. Everything is okay.
Right. Where are your feet? And it's funny because I channel my I have a sponsee who is coming up on 2 years, which is unbelievable. She's amazing. And she, uses all, like, she sounds like me, and I channel, my sponsor's name is Jen, and I channel Jen all the time.
That's
and
what we
she's
do.
like, I had your voice in my head. I'm like, no, you had Jen's voice in your head.
Yeah. I mean, listen, all this information is just passed down, but it's so interesting. Like, it's not lost on me that we are required to speak the solution. Right. It's like, we don't find the light through further investigation of the darkness. That was like a Marian
exactly
woman, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah. And there are some times where it's like, there are certain situations where it's just too much living in the problem that I'll see, and I'll be like, I have to step back because I can't be living in the problem. I need to stay in the solution.
Right. I think it's interesting to recognize, like, from a science perspective, that it's our, we have this negativity bias. It's like our brain's job is to think and to seek out problems for survival.
Right. To worry, to anticipate what could go wrong.
Yeah, for survival. So it has a place. So it's not like, oh, fuck off negative thoughts. It's like, oh, thank you for trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we're trying to cut out these different parts of ourselves. Wait, this idea of radical self-acceptance is something that I learned in recovery to recover my whole self, which has been hugely helpful.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. So it's been a while since you've written the book. I know you do a lot of recovery advocacy work. What is life for you? What's it like these days?
Knock on wood, life is good. And so I continued working. So when the book came out, I was the deputy executive director of a law firm in New York, and
that sounded intense.
It was very intense. It was like a big job, and I sat on the management committee of the firm, so it was a lot. But and everybody there, like, I went there when I was sober, so I didn't tell them that it was not their business. Like, why would I was about a year sober when I took the job. Wow. And people knew I wrote, and like, there were some people over 10 years, like, I got to know, I worked primarily with the partners of the firm in that capacity. And, for the first 10 years, I was the director of client development. And then right before the book came out, so they'd already known me for 10 years. That's when I got promoted to deputy executive director. And like, right at the beginning, I'm just sitting on the management committee of this firm. And I'm like, and I get my book deal. And I was like, oh God, because people knew I wrote, because I would go on these like writing retreats, and I had my writing workshop every Thursday night. And people would ask me, sometimes lawyers at the firm would ask me like, oh, so what's your book about? And I would say, it's memoir. Actually, it's about a challenge, a tough time I had, and what's happened since, and I think it could help somebody else. And they'd be like, okay, don't need to know, you know what I mean? They stop asking questions fast at that.
Yeah.
And
people are so afraid of hearing about what someone else's challenges are. Like, people are so uncomfortable with feelings.
Yes. So then when I got the book deal, I had to go around to the management committee, which was like the most senior or the most powerful partners in the firm first, and be like, I would knock on a door and be like, hey, I think you might have heard, I got a book deal. And they'd be like, yeah, it's great. So excited for you. And then I would like shut the door behind me, and I'd be like, now let me tell you what it's about. And so like some people knew my story, some of the partners that I was, close to, but most of them no. And so they were, and this was one of the reasons that I knew that we were ready to work on breaking stigma, because nobody reacted in a way that was like, I can't believe that, or shocked, or like really freaking, like trying to figure out what to say.
Yeah.
Like in fact, and I talk about this a lot when I speak, I would say in 80% of the cases, like I couldn't even sort of get the whole thing out because I would be nervous. I'd be like, but I never got arrested and I didn't go, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I was really high functioning and it wasn't while I was here. Right. And they would interrupt me and they would be like, my cousin or my law school roommate, because it's a huge problem in the legal profession, or whoever it was, my kid, they not only, and they weren't saying it like, oh, wow, really brave of you to speak up, and I know somebody like that too. It wasn't like that. It was like they had questions, like they wanted to talk. Like one guy was like, oh, I'm glad you said that. My brother-in-law just stopped drinking. He had to stop drinking and they're coming for Thanksgiving. Is it okay for me to serve wine? Like people had real questions. It wasn't like a ton of judgment. And the chair of the firm at the time said to me, listen, I can't control what each individual partner is going to, how they're going to react to your story. But you should know that from the perspective of the firm, you have 1000% support.
Wow.
And they actually let me for the next 5 years. Like all the partners of the firm were at my book launch party, and they let me start. My book came out right around the time that there was a big study about lawyers and substance use and mental health disorders. And so I started getting asked to speak a lot in the profession, and they let me go all over the country and work remotely when I was speaking, as long as I was calling in all the time. So I had like this 60-hour-a-week job and then all, the other stuff. And so they were incredible. And I stayed 2 years longer than I expected to. I stayed the book came out in 2016. I left the firm in August of 2019. And this is a long way to answer your question. But when I left the firm in 2019 and I launched my little advisory, I could, as long, and I travel a lot, I would travel a lot to speak. And so I just needed to be near an airport, and my husband, same, he works for himself. And so we were like, let's get out of New York. And we moved in September of 2019 to Southern California. And so now I live in Southern California, which I love. And I miss everybody in New York because of COVID. Like I didn't get to be back the way I had been at the beginning. When I first moved out here, I was back east like once a month. So I would see my family and my friends and all that. Then COVID happened and we really got cut off. But I was here and not in New York City. So it made a huge difference. And so now I'm still doing a lot of speaking. I do a lot of that stuff on primarily, over Zoom. But it's starting to be in person again. I have actually my first in-person speaking in a couple of weeks, which is going to be fun.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. And I'm working on a second book on fiction because it's fun. And I'm just learning that. It's like all new. But
that is a whole different.
Oh my God.
Different ballgame.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, but I, like it's fun. So, and I do my podcast with Tawny Lara. I don't know. I have a podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Recovery Rocks. Yeah. We love our podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll have to come hang with us on the podcast sometime.
Oh my God. It'd be such an honor.
Yeah.
This idea about breaking stigma, it's so interesting how, our worlds are all very small, right? And we all tend to think that whatever's going on in our world is what's going on in everybody else's world, right? And I was talking to this lady, I do coaching, and I was talking to this lady, she's like a high functioning executive. And she was saying, all my friends drink. And I go, guess what? None of my friends drink. I know except for like family or like very few people in my life drink. It's just all how you create your world, right?
Right. Yeah.
And in the law firm, I would imagine that because it's such a drinking, there's such a drinking culture. I think so in corporate in general, because
yes, it's not just law firms. Yeah.
Like I was in tech sales, and in sales, there's
tech is really bad. Yeah.
Man, I remember when I was at the startup and at year end, my boss, we were all in cubes, and my boss sat across from me. And they lined up shots of Fireball on my cube wall.
Oh my God.
As I was very sober. I was like, I don't know, 15, 20 years sober at
That
this
with
point.
the smell of Fireball,
I was
I think
like,
I would gag.
yeah, I was like, fuck all y'all. I felt so I did have those, occasionally I still have those feelings of being kind of left out,
Yeah.
but I had that bottom like you did where I was like, yeah, I have zero doubt about
And
what would happen to me.
And like, I always think like that when I talk to like my sponsee early on and all of that, I always say like, I promise you, you will never wake up in the morning regretting the fact that you did not drink the night before. I promise.
That's like nobody regrets going to the gym.
No.
Nobody wants to go, but
right. Nobody regrets, waking up without a hangover.
Yeah. Waking up feeling good.
Yeah.
And remembering everything. That's amazing. And waking up alone. If you went to bed alone, that's amazing.
That's amazing. And like my friends who drink, because I really did, my friends in the book are still like very close, my very close friends.
I was going to ask you about that because you seem so close. You had so many friends still when you got sober. You're still friends with everybody?
Yeah. And you know what? Like they didn't realize, look, they were partiers and they knew we could get out of control. But they didn't have the problem like I did. And when and they kind of, at the point where I got sober, they were already like, I was 38. They were aging out of drinking anyway. They were starting to have kids. They would get, didn't like waking up feeling hungover. That was all ending for them. And I was still going.
Yeah. So they were changing. They were naturally evolving.
They were naturally changing. Yeah. And so when I couldn't go, like I remember early on saying to my sponsor, being like, I'm going to go to dinner tonight with my friends. And she was like, the friends you drank with? And I said, yeah, I haven't been out to dinner with them yet. And she was like, I'm going to make a strong suggestion that you not do that. And when she would make a strong suggestion, I knew I needed to take it.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I don't know what do I do? And she was like, why don't you see if they want to have lunch on or brunch on Sunday or something or whatever? And I was like, oh, I guess I could do that. And when I did that, they were like, yeah, sure. Great. You want to go to brunch? Okay. Like I lived like a vampire in New York. And so like I learned all these daylight things that you could do with your friends. And so no, I didn't. Yes. I didn't stop seeing them at all. In fact, they were incredibly supportive, but I didn't see them in the context that I didn't see them when they were drinking.
That's a scary thing to change the nature of the relationship, but it sounds like you were able to navigate that successfully because your friends loved you.
So tight for so long. We were like a little family. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. No, they're great.
The one other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we were chatting before we started recording about some of the things that you are the most proud of since you've been sober. And you do have a heart of service. And I know that you do a lot of advocacy work and you sponsor, but we had this morning I was listening to the epilogue of your book and you mentioned, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get through this without getting all choked up. So step in.
I will. I'll jump right in.
I'll cry.
I may get choked up too.
Yeah. I mean, but so you talked about being able to care for your father at the end when he was dying, being able to give him morphine and being there and being sober and present. I mean, tell me a little bit about what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. I will always count that. I can't see anything really replacing it as kind of my biggest achievement in sobriety and recovery. Was being able to show up for my dad when he was dying. I was so fortunate that he got to see me sober for 9 years before he died. And he was so proud of me. Like he was just like amazed. They were cocktail hour drinkers. So they drank like every night, but they didn't get drunk. And so like the idea, and my parents came in to see me speak on my second anniversary. He was just, my mom's still alive and they both were incredibly proud. And I felt very proud of that. And I was able to show up. And so when he was 85 and he had he was still like sharp as a tack. He would do yoga.
Wow.
He did yoga every
What?
morning from when I was a little kid, and he was still doing yoga every morning at 85
That's
and going to
amazing.
work and golfing and go to the gym. And, he did everything on the iPad, paying all, whatever. He was more
With it.
technologically advanced than I was. And, but he was 85 and he got diagnosed, when he started feeling this real exhaustion with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and given basically 4 to 6 weeks to live.
Oh.
And so, I was very fortunate being in my job that they were a wonderful firm that gave me flexibility. And I just moved in with them in New Jersey because my mother could not function through that period. And I took over, like I led the charge on the doctor's appointments and the coordination of we had him on home hospice and, what needed to be, he called me the team leader. And just hanging out with him and just being with him, through that, and taking naps in the afternoon and doing whatever it was. And, when it came like time that he was ready for morphine, I had just gone back into the city and for like an overnight or something. And my mom called me hysterical, like, he wants the morphine and I can't do it. And
Aww.
so I just got right back in the car and drove out and I did it. And, I was just with him that whole time by his side until the very end. And being able to show up for him in that way, like, whereas I know that his experience in that time would have been very different had I not been around. And also, had I not been sober for that, I know what it would have been like. I would have barely seen him because I would have been like, I can't deal with this. And I would have been sitting on a bar stool at my local crying about the fact that my father was dying, and instead I was there. And I was, it was every painful moment, every little step down and all of that. But to be there with him and for him through that, there will never be anything that, compares to it for me in recovery. Like what more could I do? So, yeah.
That's such a beautiful, and it's these lessons that we experience. I did the same thing for my mom.
Yeah.
And it's such a mixture of bittersweet, right? They are such precious moments. There's something about death that clarifies the bullshit.
Oh my
right?
God.
An
Yeah.
impending death. And, my mom was sick for 22 days. It was so fast. And did you have those experiences where like I was giving my mom morphine all night and lorazepam and some other drugs, and I had these little background thoughts being like, you could this is some good shit. You could totally, and I'm 27 years sober, right? And I'm like, and I was like, that's so weird. That voice is still there after all this time.
Oh yeah, we had a refrigerator full of Ativan and morphine, and I was like, if we don't use it all,
what happens?
Yeah.
Can we save it for later just in case?
I know. I was like, I remember because it was in the refrigerator. And I remember thinking, I know I should want this very much. And there was that little thing that was like, maybe I should just keep some in the city just in case, I'll just put it there. So,
all these like weird little mental gymnastics that we do around.
Yeah.
It's just like a sort of an out of a body experience, but what a precious memory that
and for you too, it really does. Like I had thought, until then that a lot of things that, were that the achievements at that point, it was, obviously like before my book came out and all that stuff, but like anything that happened in sobriety before was like, oh, look at me and what I have done for myself. Look at how I've turned my life around. Right. This was about, look what I can do for him,
Yeah. And you've done a lot for other people too, and writing your book and being of service.
Yeah. I mean, like, well, yeah. And I think we all, service helps keep us sober.
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. They say that we do it for selfish reasons, but people benefit by our by our
Yes.
service. So it's all good.
No, it's a gift. It's really, if it weren't for other people doing service, I'd be dead.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what a beautiful experience that you had with your dad. When I was with my mom, she was able to say goodbye to some people. And, the conversations were always very similar in the sense that when she got to say goodbye, which was a total blessing. But
Mm-hmm.
all they talked about was the love that they shared, that they were there for each other during the hard times and that they shared some laughs.
And the
And
rest of the bullshit just disappears.
it
It
didn't
is
matter.
clarifying. You said it was clarifying, and that's the best word for it. It really, there's nothing more clarifying than those moments.
Yeah, and that was a gift. It was a very difficult experience, but it was a gift. And how has the grieving process been for you? I know it's been several years, but you don't
Yeah.
ever really get
Um,
over it.
no, you don't. All right. So I'll be honest, I'm very woo-woo, and I feel like he's with me
Same.
all the time. I really do.
Oh, that's sweet.
I never stopped talking to him after, he was just like, he was this incredible guy. And I'm sure your mom was as
She's
well.
amazing.
Yeah. And I just I never stopped talking to him. And over time, I just started developing this feeling like he's really right here with me, like all the
Yeah.
time. And I really feel that way.
Yeah.
And so the grieving is, it's hard, but it was very hard. Obviously, the beginning is you're just in shock still, especially like my dad, it was 5.5 weeks. Your mom, 22 days, you're in shock.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a process that doesn't really end. I feel like there is a piece of me that will always be missing without him. But there's a different piece of me now, having experienced that with him and, just feeling like he's close all the time.
It almost sounds like you developed a different way of relating to him. Like he's still a part of
Yes,
your
that's
life.
a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. That gives me so much hope
Oh,
thinking,
you should definitely have hope on that front.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I
It's only
definitely
been
can.
4 months for me. So I'm still
It's
trying to wrap
raw. It's
still trying to wrap
raw.
my head around it. But
And I remember at 4 months thinking like, okay, I got this. And then you wake up one day and you don't have it.
I don't have it.
It's going to
Yeah.
happen. And it's like, you have to go again. Like I said, it's the same thing. Like when you asked what I wish I knew when I got sober. And I said, I wish I could have known how to be gentler with myself.
Oh, yeah.
It's that in grief too. Like,
Right.
give yourself that space and that, acknowledging like what an amazing thing you did being there with her and being able to show up like that, but also like, like letting yourself feel it all when it comes, when it like, and it would come at weird moments. Like a month after I went back to work, probably too early. And like, after I had a big, thing that I had to present to the partners one day. So it's like 50 partners and I'm doing this presentation and I had a complete panic attack and fell apart like in front of everybody. Like they had to help me off from the front of the room.
Man.
And I know that that's what it was. Like I had been trying to be like, I'm normal, I'm fine, I'm okay. And I wasn't,
Right.
and that's how it manifested. So
I've been hearing that it hits you.
It does.
At random times and sometimes out of the blue and like random.
Perhaps when you're making a presentation of 50 partners.
Oh God, I hope not.
No, but like, and you know what? Like that's, and
you survived it.
And
anyway.
I survived it. Like that's another thing when I talk about imposter syndrome, I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I have literally had panic attacks twice in front of the partnership. I didn't get fired. Like I didn't, it sucked, but I went on.
Don't you feel like, people are actually more compassionate towards you a little bit? Like you show a human side and everybody has had struggles and pain in their life. And
but we always think, or like, I always thought it was just me. You know what I mean?
Right,
I was shocked that people were compassionate.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I would have been compassionate to someone else, but yet when it's directed at me, I'm like, wait, what? You're nice to me?
Isn't that funny? What is that? I don't know.
Again, it's like, it's our own talk in our heads.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness. Well, I've kept you a little longer than I had
Oh
intended.
no,
I just
it's wonderful.
enjoyed talking to you so much. And I'm going to see you in Miami, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, we're going to be in Miami. We have to get together. She recovers. Yeah.
Brace yourself. I'm going to be like a mom greeting a returning college student.
Oh, is that? Yeah.
That's how you described your mom, like a bear hugging you, and she's
air hugging. Oh my God. Just running at me like a linebacker. Yeah.
Yeah. So brace yourself. I will be. You'll be like, wait a minute.
I'm here for it. I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah.
It'll be so much fun. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Lisa, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I really enjoyed speaking with you.
I loved
to see you. And if people want to learn more about you or get your book, what's a good place? Do you have a website that has resources?
My website is Lisa Smith Advisory with an .com. And I'm on social at Girl Walks Out.
Girl Walks Out. Love it. Yeah, the book was so good, man. It was
Thank you.
Such a good job doing it as you were going through it. Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for all you are doing. This is amazing. I'm so honored to be on the podcast.
Thanks, man. I just celebrated 5 years of doing the podcast.
Amazing. Congratulations.
It's just a excuse for me to talk to amazing people like you.
Yeah. Well, we get to talk to you, which is fantastic.
So fun.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.
Yeah. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.